Feeling spicy? How spicy? Spicy enough to enter Halpi's Rift? Contains Clash of Kings 2021 update. Welcome. It's time to dig into the spice mine known as the Clash of Kings changes. So, this new book, Romantic, does contain, in addition to usual yearly updates, entire campaign with a lot of background, which we're barely going to skim over at this point in time, because we're getting straight to the meat of the matter, which is, of course, the rules changes for us hardcore tournament players that have just been attending non-stop tournaments during this year, where nothing at all has stood in the way of interacting in large 20-person groups for any particular reason. I certainly can't think of anything that would have prevented that from going on. So, with the minimal amount of tournaments that have actually taken place, unless you count Universal Battle, and let's be honest, no one does, then there is a short paragraph in here about the fact that there hasn't been too many tournaments. So the changes aren't too wide and sweeping. There is some juicy campaign stuff, if you're into that, and maybe we'll look at that at a later date. But there's also spicy artwork in there as well. Wrap your eyeballs around that. So, we've got plenty of people in the chat already. Plenty of people watching this, as you can imagine. This being hot, off the presses, extra spicy, extra tender, extra juicy, and succulent. It hasn't dried out at all yet. Not like the people that are going to be reviewing this thing next week, which is, of course, way too late. So, one comment that grabbed my attention was from Cherubin, who wanted to know good changes for Ratkin, and I can reveal that there is actually an entire Ratkin background section. Gives you information about their society. So look at that. Ratkin. Then got, I assume that's a map of their home region there. And then plenty of background on them. Ratkin, your Fang. The artwork again. So, pretty spicy. I think you'll agree. So that's enough about that. So the actual campaign itself, not going to go into that particularly at the moment. So there are a couple of things I want to cover in future videos. Maybe that, and also all the new juicy stuff that Mantic have been putting out, or that is coming in the near future, to test my critical eye over all of that, including the new goblins, which are obviously relevant to my interests. So the campaign adds various things, including artifacts, which we're not even going to look at right now because campaign, not tournament friendly. So after you finish the campaign section, though, you'll come to new heroes, which word on the street is that they are tournament friendly generally, unless the tournament specifies otherwise. So we'll come to those in a minute, but before we get to them, there is a change to one of the special rules in the game, and all the others are unit-specific changes. So they haven't made too many sweeping alterations to the rule set, because obviously the game hasn't been played all that much compared to previous years, with lots of factors beyond Mantic's control there. So the one rule, and one of the rumours coming in was that mortars were going to be hit with a rather large and hefty nerf bat, along with some of the undead stuff. Those were the rumours floating around and circulating the grapevine. And one of the special rules that's changed ignores cover. It's changed so that now, instead of ignoring cover entirely, you now only ignore cover unless the unit has half their base within difficult terrain. So if you're up against mortars, you want to be standing in a field now, and it's going to be much harder for it to hit you. So I assume that's a bit balancing there, and then surely that's going to be enough, and mortars are now perfectly sane and not overpowered at all, so there won't be any more changes to them. In agreement there? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So, spells, a couple of changes here. So, Hex. Hex has got a little bit of a boost here. So, whilst a unit is hexed, it may not cast spells unless it received a halt or change facing order in the movement phase. While you're hexed, you can't just carry on dancing around as if nothing happened and cast your spells willy-nilly. You have to stand still, gather your thoughts. Makes sense to me. See, Raphael quits Kings of War because of that Norse cover change. Sensible man. But greetings to everyone who's in there right now. The likes of Matt, Paul, got Guts in there. Board. Lots of people watching this but not commenting yet, waiting for the spicy, succulent, juicy contents of this book, no doubt. I've also got the main rulebook here in case I need to refer to that at any point to compare anything. So, Hex. Bit of a boost there, so Hex Caster, already quite a potent caster, so surely he's not going to get hit with a nerf bat either to counteract that little boost that his spell has got. Next, Enthrall. Remove the line. A unit can only be targeted by Enthrall once per turn. Now, I can't even remember what that does because I've never once experienced it as far as I can recall. So, let's find Enthrall. What section is that going to be in? Surely, spells. It's not in unique spells, which I just landed on there. So here we go. Enthrall. Each hit scored, the enemy unit is pulled 1 inch directly forward. Okay, it's that one. So, it can now be targeted multiple times in the same turn by Enthrall spells, which means you could drag someone quite a hefty distance across the table if you've got multiple casters. So, Raphael was about to start collecting an Abyssal Dwarf army, can you imagine? Well, surely only a fool would do that now, with the changes we've heard so far. So, Mind Fog, add Shattering as a modifier. Okay, just makes it a little bit more potent. A little bit of spice on there. So, one of the big, juicy, tender, moist changes here is that following units are no longer irregular. So, I haven't been able to unlock with these units before, and now you can. So, the Elves, War Chariots, Drakons, like the sound of that, Blade Stalkers, Empire of Dust, Revenant Chariots, fair enough. Everyone likes their Egyptian-themed chariot armies, they're always cool. Goblins, Fleabag Chariots. So they're giving chariots a bit of a boost here. Orcs, Skulk Raider Chariots. Basilia, Elohai. I don't think they're as ridiculously powerful as they used to be, so maybe it's not too terrible. Sisterhood Panther Chariots. So yeah, lots of chariots here are no longer irregular. So is that enough to make people take more chariots? Let's see. Force of Nature, Naiad Heart Piercers. They're a pretty tasty unit, I thought. I'm not sure whether they needed a boost. Maybe it's just the army issues. Forces of the Abyss, Tortured Souls, Flame Bearers. You can unlock with those now. The Trident Realm, Naiad Heart Piercers. Yeah, so the same unit as Forces of Nature. Northern Alliance, Pack Hunters. Sylvankin, Glade Stalkers, Twilightkin, Glade Stalkers, Varangur, Night Raiders. So mostly chariots, but there are a few other notable units sprinkled in there. No changes for goblins or abyssal dwarves or undead or ogres or any of the armies that I play, really. Not relevant to me whatsoever. Interesting. Anyone who plays any of these armies, as you're watching this, if any of these changes tickle you in any particular way, let me know. Whether they tickle your funny bone or your rage gland. So, now we get to the unit changes. And remember when I said that changing the ignores cover rule is a giant nerf swing to the heavy mortar for Abyssal Dwarves, and surely it doesn't need any other downgrades. Encore Heavy Mortar. Unit is now piercing 2. Piercing 2, and it can now be affected by cover for units that are 50% more in difficult terrain. Oh, that's a bit of a spicy one there. Previously, the Heavy Mortar, with its vicious streak, is exactly what you would want to shoot at anything that's defense 6. Defense 5 is a really juicy target as well, but things that are defense 6, typically you don't have a lot in your army that thinks, yes, I really want to be hitting defense 6 units, but the Heavy Mortar was definitely one of them, because with the piercing 3 and vicious, you're doing an awful lot of wounds, but now with only piercing 2 and change to cover, it makes me glad that I didn't just buy multiple heavy mortars. I actually bought one heavy mortar and one Katsuchan rocket launcher and just used it as a heavy mortar. So I'll be looking at the stats for all the war machines a bit more closely now to determine whether any of them are a more interesting choice. It's still good, depending what you come up against. Were going to be games, if you take a list with 3 heavy mortars in it, you were bound to come up against something with no high defense anyway. So it's now just a defense 4 Annihilator, but you're paying a lot for it. So whether that makes it significantly better than the light mortar now. Let's go to the Abyssal Dwarf army list and have a look at the war machine right now, in fact. Because some of them I haven't even looked at that closely because the heavy mortar is such an auto include. I can understand it being nerfed slightly. Have we got this page? Okay, so we've got the Grog mortar, the heavy mortar, and the launcher. So, 20 more points you pay for the heavy mortar compared to the light mortar. Same range. So the heavy mortar is blast D3 plus 2 instead of plus 1. Both ignore cover, both indirect, both piercing 2 now. Both reload. Shattering on the heavy mortar, and they both have vicious. So is that worth paying 20 points for? 1 extra hit and shattering? Maybe, but is it worth spamming 3 of them? I'm not so sure at this stage. The Katsuchan rocket launcher, let's look at that now, because both of these can potentially be affected by cover now. So Katsuchan rocket launcher also has the ignores cover rule actually, so it's also affected by same range, blast D3, but this has 3 attacks instead of only 2. Indirect, piercing 1 only, reload, vicious, and that is 10 points cheaper than the light mortar. So you're paying 10 points there to get the extra guaranteed hit, but you're losing an attack. So, what looks good now from this lot? I don't know, I would seriously consider downgrading to the light mortar just to see how it goes. It's got the same base size, so my existing war machines can easily be used as light mortars. They're already very mortary. So, worth a punt, give them a go, and that would shave a few points off as well for something else. So, worth a try. And, let's see. So, next, Hex Caster. So, got a little bit of a boost with the change to the Hex spell, making it slightly better. However, the weakness option is now only an addition. You can't replace Hex with it. So you can only pay to get weakness. So you can't just have the really cheap Hex Caster with weakness using basically the weakening lightning bolt. You now have to have weakness on it. You have to have Hex, should I say, and you can also take weakness as an upgrade. So if you want to be using the weakness strategy, which I've done a fair bit with the Wall of Defense 6, then weaken the enemy units as they come in, you're going to be paying more for that now, which isn't too ridiculous. And the fact that Hex has been boosted a tiny bit makes that a slightly more choice as well, the fact you don't have to pay extra for it. So I think perhaps they thought that Hex Casters were pretty much just weakness casters because people were using weakness an awful lot with them rather than Hex. So I think I can understand that one. Not too enraged on there. So Basilia. High Paladin on Dragon. Amend nerve to 1719 and gain headstrong. Let's see. What was its nerve before? It'd be nice if it just told you. But I have to go digging through the armies. I don't. There's Basilia / Basileia. I don't think there's any general consensus on how to pronounce that word. Well, this is compelling. Let's see. Can't find it quick then. Surely they've got to be near the back, no? Got to be after orcs and undead, surely. Nope. They're just way forward. Oh, Brian says it was -20. There you go, so I don't even need to find it. So, it comes 1719, so the High Paladin on Dragon, not quite as spicy anymore. If you thought it was dishing out too much pain, it now can't take quite as much pain. Alohai and your Alohai unit is no longer a regular, as we know, but still cannot be taken as allies. Very important, because that's what people were doing frequently. Not much to say on that. Seems necessary because in the previous edition, Alohai were the must include allies. Them and Ogre Shooters, I think, were the main ones people took. Dwarves. Warsmith. Amend Inspiring and Aura too. Inspiring, Warsmith and Iron Watch only. And Aura, Elite. Ranged, Warsmith and Iron Watch only. So Iron Watch. Presumably that keyword is also on war machines. Let's see if I can find the dwarf list here. Because that would make sense to me if it also affects... Oh, there's Basileans. If it also affects the Iron Watch infantry now, whereas it before it only affected war machines, I'm going to assume that is the case. And in fact, I found it right here. So, where is Mr. Warsmith? There we go. Aha! So yeah, it was war engines only before. So Iron Watch. Who is Iron? Let's see. What's the Iron Watch keyword? Iron Watch rifles, Iron Watch crossbows. Oh! The war engines do not have Iron. Oh, but they do have Warsmith. Okay, yeah. So war engines will be affected, and also you can affect your Iron Watch rifles and crossbows now. So maybe they weren't very popular, they needed that little bit of a boost to those two units, and adding that bit of synergy there, the Warsmith, is going to make them vastly more popular, who knows? Don't forget to like the video, by the way. Empire of Dust. So, Revenant Cavalry, widely considered to be one of the filth choices, for undead at least. I don't know whether they were the same for Empire of Dust minds of the world. Mend points cost to 115, 180. So, what were they before Empire of Dust? How much were you paying for your Revenant Cavalry before? Let's just look at the undead one and assume it's the same. Let's see. Revenant Cavalry. 165 and 280 they were paying for their large units. So Empire of Dust presumably can't take a horde. 115 and 180. Whereas the undead... Yeah, okay, I assume that's about the same then. So a little bit of an increase there. Not a vast increase, but a slight one. They were supposed to be very tasty. And hordes of Revenant Cavalry had been stalking battlefields. So, a little bit of a boost there in points. Revenant King on Undead Great Flying Worm. Amend the unit's nerve to -18 and points to 265. So what was it before? Let's see. Is that the same as the Undead one as well? So Revenant King on Great. There we go. Great Flying Worm. So 265. So yeah, that's got more expensive, and the nerve has gone down by 1. Okay. So that was obviously deemed to be too damn good. I think it's exactly the same stat line in the Undead and the Empire of Dust, that unit. So they've suffered the same fate, I'll tell you that now. The Undead one as well, which is further down. Look, and the Revenant Cavalry for the Undead, the Horde has gone up to 305 points from 280, so a 25 point boost there. Seems fair because people were considering them the ultimate filth last time I checked. Okay, who's next? Brian says Vamp on Peg is even better now. Well, I want Vampire on Pegasus to be good because I have models that can represent that. So let's look at the rest of the Undead while we're here as well. So Empire of Dust first. Cursed High Priest. Replace Drain Life spell option with Drain Life 6, 30 points. Okay. Place Reanimator special rule with for each friendly core skeleton unit within 6, you may reroll 1 dice that fail to hit with Drain Life, Fireball, Heal, Hex, Surge, Weakness, and Wind Blast. Maximum of 2 rerolls. So yeah, if you hang around your skeletons, you can reroll your spell dice. Fair enough. Soul Snare now has Spellcaster 1. So, I don't know whether there are some things in the campaign use that, but we were told that the Spellcaster and a number thing would come up later in the rules. There's probably something in the campaign for that. Let's see, Force of Nature, Tree Herder, add the following upgrade. Upgrade to the Wilt Father. Losing Radiance of Life, increasing attacks to 10, nerve to -19 and gaining Aura Vicious, Verdant only, and Cloak of Death for 40 points. Chinook upgrade cannot be taken in. Okay, where's the Force of Nature? So there's another one here that I want to look at. Another unit. Tree Herders always seem to be fairly popular whenever I've seen Forces of Nature. So I don't know whether they needed to actually be better as such. So, while I'm doing this, I am going to outrage the world by muting myself and very briefly turning off the because I feel a sneeze coming up. Just enough. Okay, we are back. And back to the book. So, where were we? Looking for the Forces of Nature. I need someone in the chat telling me the pages for all these armies. A lot of them that I don't routinely visit. Found Forces of Nature here. So, let's have a look. Did the Tree Herder need this? Let's have a look at the spice machine on. So, Mr. Tree Herder. Let's see. 260 points. So his attacks go up by 1 if you give him that upgrade. But you lose Radiance of Life. And nerve to -19, so a little bit of a boost to the nerve. Gain the Vicious Aura. So if you want to turn him into more of a fighty a monster leader type unit rather than elite type one, then fair enough. Christopher says Spellcaster 1 on Soul Snare means it can be hexed. No. I like it. This book brings only sad nerfs. Maybe for those of us that painted 1,000 heavy mortars. But then again, you can just use them as mortars. Disruption. So, Free Dwarves. Add tracker keyword to Free Dwarf Spear Levy. Free Dwarf Shield Breakers, Free Dwarf Ironwatch Rifles, Free Dwarf Ironwatch Crossbows. Okay. So, tracker, presumably that means that they'll benefit from some of the auras and hero abilities and such. Cool, I guess. Goblins. Wing it. Add the following text to the Eye in the Sky rule. This special rule may not be used whilst disordered. Okay, that does make sense. You're not going to be spying on people and reporting back your findings while disordered. So that does make sense. And people could consider that a bit of a, not necessarily an exploit, but it just defies logic a little bit. And I don't know how widely played the whole goblin artillery firing line with the Wingets was. Obviously the tournament scene hasn't exactly been paid zero attention to the Universal Battle tournament scene. But that was one of the lists that was being thrown around as a potential cheese fest. Night Stalkers. Soul Drinker. Amend points cost to 80. Well, let's see what it was before. Because it actually falls open at the Night Stalkers page for some reason. I haven't spent that much time in there. I haven't even got my army painted. So, Soul Drinker. Used to be 65 points, is now 80 points. So, more expensive. So it must have been a bit of a steal before. We are going to get to the new characters in a minute, the new heroes. Did I skip over the Forces of Nature Avatar of the Green Lady? Amended points cost to 150. I think so. How much did she cost before? Forces of Nature. Okay, there it is. Forces of Nature. The Green Lady, 185 points. Now she's 150 points. Well, that is a significant drop. That sounds like a confession that they got it horribly wrong. I remember the Green Lady was an absolute beast in the previous edition. So maybe she was terrible and never taken. So maybe with a 35 points reduction, she'll be more popular. Salamanders. Decotar Hunters. Add steady aim special rule to both the unit's blowpipes and bows ranged weapons. I'll give you that, bit of steady aim. A steady aim on blowpipes does seem like it would make sense because it's a unit that would want to be moving, because it's not the longest range, as far as I recall. Want to be moving while doing it and not having steady aim seems like an issue a bit there. Sylvankin, Tree Herder, so yeah, the same upgrade as the Forces of Nature. Bosk Wraiths and Archery. These units gain the path. I would have personally thought that all units like that would have something like path. And see again, it's amended. I'm not sure why they've split off into so many other lists. I think they could have just consolidated this game. Twilight Kin, Impalers, amend points cost. Okay. Let's see if we can find the old Twilight Kin. They're even in the books now these days. I haven't looked recently. Since they ditched the model line, I think. Wiglet Kin, are you in the book? They might be. If anyone's got a page, let me know. I don't even know if there's a contents page in this book. Have a look. Ah, there we go. So, I do not see any evidence of Twigletkin in here. Are they in the other book? Do I even have the other? Sure I do. Yeah, they did. I'm not imagining it. They did release an Uncharted Empires list. They must have done. Well, I don't see it anywhere in here. So, you know what? Let's skip Twigletkin. Because we want to get to the rest of the undead stuff. So, Revenant Cavalry, we've been over that. They were 170 points for a regiment, apparently. Okay, so they're down to 105 or 160 now. Blade Dancers have moved to 125, 190. Throne-bound Butchers have a value of 1315 regiment, and the Horde value is 1618 now. Okay, Undead. So, Revenant Cavalry, we've been over those. Same for the Revenant King on Great Undead Flying Worm. Wraiths, the unit is now irregular. So, the theme of the book seems to be units not being irregular anymore, but the Wraiths have got the opposite. So, presumably, they were being spammed by heavens. So, they are now irregular. Lich King, replace Drain Life spell option with Drain Life 6, 30 points. Necromancer, replace Drain Life spell with Drain Life 4, 20 points. So, I'm going to guess that people are going to be paying more for Drain Life now, because I seem to think that it was very powerful. Let's have a look if I'm correct. How much were you paying before for your Drain Life King? 35 points. Nope, it's actually got cheaper. So ignore me. Apparently Drain Life isn't quite good enough. So now it's a bit cheaper. Trident Realms, Depth Horrors. Regiment has a nerve value of 1315 and a horde 1618, and they gain Fury. Nice. And the Depth Horror Eternal gets similar change there. So those are all the unit changes. No changes for ogres, no changes for orcs. Any other units, any other armies, mean armies that don't have any changes at all? Northern Alliance, nothing for them. So they obviously felt that just a few units were out of whack and needed a bit of a boost aura. So, with that, well, after this in the book, you actually get a battle report, which presumably is the giant game that they had at Mantic HQ a while back. So let's look at some heroes now, because there are several. I want to hear all your thoughts on this, by the way. Brian says Butchers were nerfed hard. Yeah. Chris says Uncharted Empires does exist. Yeah, I'm sure it does. I don't know where my copy of it is, though. I've got the Dungeon Saga Adventurer's Companion right here, the rare misprinted version that came with the Kickstarter initially with no page references in it, which they did then replace to their credit. I did just sell my Dungeon Saga, actually, because I was never going to get around to playing it. If I am ever going to play it, it's probably going to be with people that already own it. I don't need an unpainted copy of it. So can't hold on to all my belongings anymore. As you can see, I'm in a room where my belongings are stacked high behind me that way. See them all there. Those are all my armies boxed up mostly over there. And speaking of which, let's get pointing that way, because that Patreon. Give me all your money, folks. I need it. Give me. So let's start with the new heroes on the Basileans. We've got Tollivar the Seer. Spellcaster. Spellcastery looking nerve. 150 points. Individual inspiring Iron Resolve. When targeting angelic units, 6 inches to his Bane Chant and Bastion spells. Successfully casting Bastion can cast another spell immediately. Bane Chant 3, Bastion 1, 2, whatever that means, and Fireball 10. Who knows how good that is? Not me, because that's not an army I've come up against ever, as far as I can remember in 3rd edition. Elves and Sylvankin gain Nimue Waydancer, who's also a spellcaster. Cloak of Death, individual, inspiring, verdant, stealthy. Wanderer of the Ways, once per game before Nimue Waydancer is given an order, she increases her speed to 10 and gains the Fly special rule until the end of the turn. The turn this ability is activated, Nimue Waydancer may still cast spells, even if she was given an at the double order. So it's kind of like a teleport. Fireball 10, Heal 4, Surge 4, Wind Blast 5. Okay, that's pretty significant then. So, if you can, once per game, essentially teleport 20 inches, and then cast Surge 4 or Wind Blast 5, that could be quite a big deal, actually, because you totally change the angle of approach on these things. Obviously important for Wind Blast. Surge, you can get closer to units that might extra. Fireball also nice if you use it to jump over all the enemy lines to attack something weak behind them. Like a self-teleportation once per game, essentially. 150 points for that. 3 dwarves gain Bannock Coalarm, not Polearm, Coalarm. So this looks like a... This has got Spellcaster 1 as well. 6 attacks. So a bit of a fighty spellcaster. This one, 135 points. Brutal 1, Crushing Strength 2. Headstrong Individual, Inspiring Scout, Forge Bless. When he casts Fireball, the attacks gain the Shattering special rule. Okay, Bane Chant 2, Fireball 10. And that's that for him. Northern Alliance, Serakina the Ice Queen. Let me know your thoughts on these, by the way. Chris, is that spelled Nimue? Yes, that is how the Elves and Sylvankin is spelled. Northern Alliance, Serakina the Ice Queen. 130 points. So, Spellcaster 2. Snare, individual, very inspiring, Frostbound only. Radiance of Life, Frostbound only. 1 or more hits are scored with Serakina's Wind Blast spell. The enemy target unit is given the Frozen special rule for the duration of his next turn. Doesn't sound too crazy. Surge 8, Wind Blast 6. Okay, so you can Wind Blast enemies away and freeze them up real good at the same time. For 130 points. Force of Nature, Kapoka the Hidden Saviour. Aura, Phalanx, Verdant. Interesting, Phalanx Aura. Individual, Inspiring, Pathfinder, Scout, Stealthy. Heal 4, Weakness 3. 145 points. Phalanx Aura is an interesting one. Are there any other units in the game that have that? Anyone out there with the Phalanx Aura? Because Phalanx is something that you plan to keep in your list, and then you get into a little deployment battle of wits with your opponent to try and line it up against their cavalry general. So the fact that you can have a Phalanx Aura on a unit that is scouting, speed 5, so you can move around reasonably. Yeah, you can move that Phalanx around to where it's needed within your list. So you don't have to build a list specifically with the Phalanx in it if you've got CoK, the Hidden Saviour. So Brian says no. I assume that's answering to the question whether any units have the Aura Phalanx. So that's a very interesting concept there. Yeah, because the Phalanx units, I always find, okay, you can lock down a particular part of the battlefield against cavalry, but it's a little bit situational, and it's just that tiny part that they have to avoid. So they'll just send the non-cavalry there, and the cavalry will just run riot on the rest of your army, unless you pay for an entire front line of phalanx, and then just hope that there's plenty of cavalry charging you. So with that aura, you just move it around to where it's needed quite easily. Hero heavy infantry. So with being individual, obviously you can just move around rapidly, nimbly, picking that aura where it's needed. Sounds good to me. Yes, interesting. Ogres. Nomagarok. So, the return of Nomagarok. Hero large infantry, spellcaster 2, 140 points. Brutal, crushing strength 1, inspiring, nimble, ogre warlock. For each friendly core large infantry regiment or large infantry horde within 6 inches, increase the amount of dice rolled with Bane Chant, heal, and lightning bolt by 1 to a bonus of +3. Tasty. So you're not really going to fail to get that Bane Chant off, are you? Bloodlust. Any friendly core units hit with Nomagarok's heal spell gains Vicious for the remainder of the turn. Bane Chant 3, heal 4, lightning bolt. 140 points, that one sounds like an absolute bargain to me. That sounds great. Someone tell me the downside to this guy. 5 attacks as well. It's on 4s. It's 5 plus nerve, 12, 14. That just sounds really good. If you stick around 3 of your own units, you'll have Lightning Bolt 7, Bane Chant 6, Heal 7, and then whoever you heal gains Vicious. For 140 points. That sounds like an awful lot, that price. Sounds good. Chris says absolute bargain. I agree. Mod says heal is much needed in an ogre army. Sure is that. It's not like they were wanting for it before. They already have access to plenty of heal and drain life abilities. But this guy, I approve. He's got my thumbs up for this one. There you go. Okay, let's go on to the next one, Trident Realm. So, Kirogsh. Hunter in the Deep. 140 points. Pushing strength 1, ensnare, individual, inspiring. Cephalopod and waterbound only. Scout, stealthy, Hunter in the Deep. Kirogsh gains vicious, melee, and has double attacks versus large cavalry monsters and titans only. Nice. So he has 5 attacks as standard, hits on 3s. So if you can find yourself some nice large cav or monsters who don't have amazing defense, because he's only got the crushing strength 1, then you can do some serious damage there. Lightning bolt 3 as well. Sounds pretty good. Not bad at all. Then, Forces of the Abyss. Zazuzu the Betrayer. So, not Basusu, but Zazuzu. Fury, Nimble, Regeneration 5+. This is 110 points, by the way, so inexpensive. Spellcaster 2. Betrayal. For each friendly unit within 6 inches of Zazuzu, gains an additional +1 value to lightning bolts to a maximum of 3. All friendly units within 6 inches, excluding Zazuzu, then receive 1 point of damage when lightning bolt is cast. No nerve test is take for damage caused to friendly units in this way. I assume that means is taken. Lightning bolt 5, so you can get up to lightning bolt 8, but whenever lightning bolt is cast, the friendly units within 6 that were boosting your lightning bolt will take damage. So you want to carry him around. He's inexpensive, so if you want this nice little lightning bolt platform, carry him around with some expendable units or some giant units that won't care about 1 damage being plinked on them. Or if you've got anything with regeneration, for example. So it's only going to be 1 damage. Not that big of a deal, really. Not bad. The price. For a potential Lightning Bolt 8 for 110 points, you can't really argue with that. Just have to be careful with the special ability that you're not using it in strange and unwise ways. Something for you to study anyway. Okay. Yes, he does have 7 attacks, actually. For some odd reason. Yeah, very strange. Abyssal Dwarves. This is what we've been waiting for, folks. So, you may recall that in 2nd edition, prior to 3rd, I was using Dravik Dalkan and Infernock. They're back, baby. So, we've now got Infernock and Infernox in the same list. From the game that brought you all the heroes with similar names like Grokamok, Nomagorok, Gakamak, and so on, we now have Infernock and Infernox at the same time. So, let's see. Let's get the Abyssal Dwarf page open so we can compare them to their standard equivalents. Because, obviously, one of them is an Iron Caster and one of them is a Greater Obsidian Golem, essentially. So we can line them up exactly against that. Let's see. So we've got Iron Caster there. Where's the Greater Obsidian? There it is. So let's compare the Greater Obsidian Golem with Infernock. So, dash 19, that's the same. Paying 20 more points for Infernock, you have 2 more attacks. Same melee stat. Crushing Strength 4 on Infernock, so you get extra Crushing Strength, which is going to help you a lot against Defense 6 only, really. Brutal 1, which the Greater Golem doesn't have. Strider, yes, they both have that. They both have Vicious. Bound Soul. As long as a friendly core Dravik Dalkan is alive and in play, Infernock has the Inspiring Self special rule. Nice. So I feel like that's a lot for 20 points. One of the downsides of the Greater Obsidian Golem is the relatively small number of attacks. So it's boosting that one slightly weak area that it is. And it can inspire itself and it has more Crushing Strength. And Brutal. Cha-ching. That's got my... Oh, Matt says Greater Obsidian Golem is 12 already. That is correct, actually. So, you're gaining Brutal and Crushing Strength and inspiring yourself for 20 points. Sounds good. Because that number of attacks, it's not outrageous. So Brutal is actually a big deal there. So you're not just blowing things off the table with 12 attacks. So that bit of Brutal can make a difference. And the extra Crushing Strength, welcome. And Inspiring Self, I like it. So let's think about this though. Inspiring Self. How often are you going to have Infernock away from sources of inspiring? Well, you're going to want to surge him probably. So he's going to be near your casters. But then, once you surge somebody, typically they're not going to remain within inspiring range of that character, I would suggest. So, yeah, I like it. Still gets thumbs up despite the fact that the regular one already had 12 attack. I'll take it. So, Dravik Dalkan. Let's compare him to the Iron Caster. Since we've got the stamp of approval for Infernock so far. Points. If you find yourself lacking 20 points in the list, then obviously you'd think about downgrading that. But if you have 20 points spare, you'd also think about upgrading or Greater Obsidian Golem to Inferno. One thing that's missing, I think, from a lot of the Abyssal Dwarf lists is something like Brutal. some of the units. You're taking Greater Obsidian Golem, Lesser Obsidian Golems, and Grotesques. And you've got a lot of stuff that's hitting on 4+. So a bit of a mediocre round, and suddenly you find yourself not actually doing that many wounds. So a bit of brutal added in there as well. Doesn't go amiss. Where is the Ironcaster? Okay, there we go. The regular Ironcaster is 110 points. Dravik Dalkan is 155 points. So let's see if he's worth 45 more points. He has 1 extra attack, which is bleh. He has +1 nerve, so he's 12-14 instead of 11-13, which is okay. Same defense, same speed, same melee stats. If you're using him to fight in close combat, then you're doing something wrong anyway. So nothing so far. Crushing strength 1. Interesting. So if for some reason he can't use his spells later on in the game, if he's just been charged and damaged, for instance, then you can actually potentially do a wound to something now in close combat, whereas regular Ironcaster can't. So we're not going to consider that worth 45 points though, so let's see what else he's got. Position. Unless Infernock is engaged or disordered, Dravik Dalkan may use Infernock's line of sight to cast spells. When doing so, measure range from Infernock's leader point instead of Dravik Dalkan's. Bum bum bum. So, interesting. So, when Infernock is moving towards the enemy, uses Infernock's line of sight to cast spells. So does that mean you can cast spells on Infernock using Infernock's line of sight and range? Can he cast spells backwards onto himself from that point? So yeah, Dravik can just hide. So being self-inspiring is a lot more useful when you double it with that ability there. Dravik doesn't even have to come near the fight. If Infernock is moving in, you can then use his leader point to cast, let's say, Fireball 12 or Surge 12. And then if you've got another caster maybe, you could then Surge in Infernock if you use one of those spells on something else. You only can't do it when Infernock is engaged or disordered. Very interesting. Maud says, Fireball 12 on a height 6 platform is certainly interesting. Spicy. I approve. I like that combo. So, what else? So he's got heal 3, Hellforged only. Tiny amount of heal there. So what I would like to have seen, what they had before, was the ability for Infernock to be healed when Dravik used his fireball on enemy units, which isn't there anymore, but it's more offensive now and not defensive. So yeah, there's all kinds of weird things you could line up with this. Yes. So if you did have a second Surge caster, there's all kinds of weird shenanigans you could set up here. I'd like to hear people theorising on what you could do with that. Something I'm definitely going to consider testing out. Maybe with the extra points I save, downgrading my mortars. Okay, Night Stalkers. Esenishra, the Wailing Shadow. 160 points. So, expensive-ish. Spellcaster 2, Hero Infantry. Pushing Strength 3, Dread, Fly, Individual, Mighty, Mind Thirst, Stealthy, Strider. That is a lot of special rules. Beguilement. If Esenishra's Enthrall spell causes enough hits that an enemy unit would be able to move into contact with Esenra herself, the normal 1-inch stopping restriction is lifted. After contact is made, Esenishra may immediately charge and align against the enemy facing moved into contact with her. However, Charged unit will not take any nerve tests for the damage it might have taken in the previous ranged phase. So, instead of charging the enemy, you can pull them towards you and still fight them. Interesting. Enthrall 7. People who use that spell more frequently than I do can tell you whether that's a game changer. The Night Stalkers. A. Goblins. Grup Longnail. Spellcaster 1. Tax 4. Nerve, dash 12. Blast D3, crushing strength 1, duelist, ensnare individual. Special rule. Vulgar. Attacking in melee. If one or more hits are scored, the target unit has a -1 modifier when rolling to damage enemy units during its turn. So, if you score any hits, they pretty much suffer weakness, kind of. Any rolls the unit makes of natural 6 will still cause damage, however. This effect only applies once and does not work in conjunction with the spell. So yeah, it's essentially weakness, by the sounds of it. Only 90 points for this hero. Sounds okay. Not terrible by any means, but doesn't exactly blow me away either. The amount of attacks is actually quite nice, considering it's got Blast D3. Hits on 3s. So, yeah, the more I look at it, the better it looks actually, with the ensnare on there as well. And the dash 12. Yeah, I think I quite like that for the price. Sounds okay at first glance. Empire of Dust. Sebek Ray the Accursed. Spellcaster 3. Individual, very inspiring. For each friendly core skeleton unit within 6 inches, you may reroll 1 dice that failed to hit with Drain Life, Fireball, Heal, Hex, Surge, Weakness, and Wind Blast. Maximum of 2 reroll. Glory for the Mighty Dead. After casting Heal on a friendly core unit, this unit may immediately cast Surge against the same target. Heal 5, Surge 8. Okay, so you can heal and surge a unit in the same turn. And you can get bonuses to your heal and surge and various other spells should you choose to take them. Sounds okay. 155 points, so not cheap. Is that right? Dwarves did not get a character. 3 dwarves did. Okay, Ratkin. Twitch Keen Ear. Spellcaster 3. Dash 12, 120 points. Individual Inspiring. All these characters with so many special rules, and then we've had a couple that just had 2. You sound a bit disappointed, don't you? Eye of the Abyss. If Twitch Keen Ear successfully cast Bane Chant, the target unit may, after rolling to hit into damage in the melee phase, discard all damage caused and start again. Roll to hit into damage again. Second result stands. Rolling in this way must take place before testing for nerve and rolling any other attacks from any other units in the same phase. Enchant 3, Hex 3. So, interesting. So Banechant not only gives you the usual boost, but also means that you can, after rolling to hit and damage, you can just choose to do it again if it wasn't good enough. Sounds good. And it's not like a once per game thing. So 120 points, that sounds pretty good actually. Yeah, if you've got a unit that normally does great damage, but you have that one really abysmal round, you can mitigate that now. In advance, though, by casting Banechant on the unit. So if you've got a unit that would expect to do a lot of damage if Banechanted, suddenly, pretty tasty. Orcs. Ulpgar the Mad. Spellcaster 3. 1220 points. Crushing Strength 1 as an Orc would. Individual, Inspiring. Ulpgar's Mad Magic. For each friendly core, Heavy Infantry Regiment, Heavy Infantry Horde, or Heavy Infantry Legion within 6 inches of Ulpgar, increase the amount of dice rolled with Bane Chant Fireball by 1 to a maximum bonus of plus 11. That's a large number. He already has Fireball 7. Okay then. And that's not even the end of it. So, for each successful hit with Bane Chant, the target unit gains Life Leech +1 to a maximum of +3 until the start of the next turn. Ulpgar the Mad. He also gets this thumb up as well. So only 120 points, that sounds amazing. Unless someone tells me I'm missing something that makes it terrible. But boosting your Fireball potentially by 11. I mean, it's not that necessary to boost your Bane Chant by that much, but how often are you going to actually be around 11 units? Let's think about this for a second. This is Orcs though. You can have a lot of units. Yeah, so maybe Orc regiments would be the way to go with this guy. But it's only the heavy infantry that count though. So you wouldn't be able to boost this with your Orklings or your Trolls, for instance. It seems like with regiments you would get the most out of this. A regiment is an Orc regiment less than 6 inches across? Sure it is. So you could surround him with regiments. Is it physically possible to get that maximum bonus of 11? Someone work that out. Be within 6 inches of him. Without it being like a weird encircling round him with only the corner of the unit pointing towards him, would that even work? Probably a way of doing it and getting a lot of units in there. You spread them out a bit. Well, for Fireball 18, why not give it a try? Brian says no, suggesting maybe it's not possible to do that. But then why give him the option of getting plus 11? Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Okay, everyone out there, homework. Get out there, get on your battlefield, get some Orc regiments, and see how many of them you can get within 6 inches of one hero. I'll be impressed if it gets anywhere near 11. Sam says they're 4 inches deep. So you can stack 3 on each side. Okay. Fair enough. So yeah, you can see how you could get like 4, 5, or 6, 7, maybe even 8 of them. But I'm struggling with the 11 part of it. So someone draw it out on a little bit of graphical wizardry. Okay, next. That sounds good. Ratkin, we already did that. Undead Sweenock Iceblood. -13, 1 attack, so spellcaster, 120 points. Aura, elite, melee, skeleton infantry only, individual, inspiring. The outsider, when Sweenock is included in an undead army, No other unique heroes may be included in it. What kind of special rule is that? Spells, Fireball 10, Surge 8. Is that it? We used to like walls of text on these heroes. There's one special rule is that you can't take other heroes with him. So not too expensive, sit him among your skeletons, give them elite, and inspire them. And you've got Surge 8 and Fireball 10. Okay, not very excited by that one. Sam says you could get plus 12 if not capped at 11. 6 in front, 6 behind. Okay, if you tell me that all those units can get within 6 inches of him, then I will trust you. Would they be in any kind of formation that they would want to fight in? And how many points would that formation cost? What's the cheapest setup you can get? Give him Fireball 18. And is it worth having all those units in your army purely to activate that ability? I do like it though. Even the Bane Chant ability I like. And boosting the Fireball, if you obviously you're not going to go out of your way to try and get it to a plus 11 each time. But any kind of boost to the Fireball sounds good to me. And a boost to the Bane Chant can't hurt either. Especially since with each hit caused by the Bane Chant, then you can add Life Leech to the unit as well. You want to get more dice so you can get more hits for that. Okay, and that's all the heroes. So Mod says the Elite Aura is his thing. Yeah, but we want more spice than that. That Undead hero, very underwhelming after all those walls of text we just went through. We've got this guy. Sweenock. Fun to say his name though, I'll give him that. So, what have we learned today, children? We've learned that the Heavy Mortar is not must include anymore. Have we learned that anything else is not must include? Possibly Revenant Cavalry, I don't know. Do we think that's enough of a points boost for them? Some of the flyers got changes. Some units become irregular, some units become regular. Is this going to shake things up? Was there anything to shake up with the global pandemic going on? Interesting regardless. And I think had they just released that as a little pamphlet with just 5 pages of changes, then I don't think it would have been worth any kind of book price. I can understand them also combining it, especially this year, with a bit of campaign action. So whether they already had that planned before there was a pandemic, I don't know. But either way, I think it's probably a good idea. And maybe it'll get people playing campaigns as well, because at the moment would probably be a perfect time to look into playing a campaign. Because as people still generally, I know there's a few exceptions, but most people either can't or aren't willing to mingle in large numbers now for tournaments. Maybe small multi-person campaigns like people within your bubble or just a couple of people in your local area. People are more happy doing that than interacting with a lot of strangers at a tournament at the moment. So maybe a campaign would be a good idea for some people. I can see the logic in that. Okay. Mod says, the Butcher nerf isn't really a big nerf. Poor depth horrors though. Raphael might try a campaign. And yes, do some homework. Show me diagrams. I want scientific, mathematical diagrams. Show me if that orc hero, his name again. Oh yes, his name is Ulpgar the Mad. See how many orc units you can get within 6 inches of him, and whether he would be in any position to use his spells effectively if they were all within range. Depends what you're coming up against, I suppose. Mod is organising a campaign for his group, and we're pretty excited. So that concludes the look through the Clash of Kings 2021 changes. In the absence of any battle reports this week, I am looking at getting some games in soon though, so don't worry about that. Then I'm also going to do a video on some of the other Kings of War stuff, some of the new releases that are coming soon or potentially already out, I haven't checked. And I look forward to that. Right, is there any Scarecrows nerfs? I didn't see anything in there. There is the Andean Rem show tomorrow for those of you that way inclined. I don't think we've got a topic decided yet. But it's also going to be, for anyone interested in this, the finale of the season 2 of the Forest of Rem, which is a role-playing extravaganza on that show. Likes that kind of thing. Don't forget to check that out. Mr. Remington's PC is also kind of working now, so we can finish Vermintide as well, which is a nice series on this channel, which some of you may have been following. Playing Warhammer End Times Vermintide, the PC game. And we're going to move on to the sequel at some point as well. It's going to be extra spicy. So, let me give some special thanks to some patrons now. So, on the subject of Patreon, now obviously I've moved location, moved halfway across the country, and currently working full-time. So, that means if you want a vast amount of video content flowing forth into your YouTube inbox, then what you need to do is get on Patreon and give me all of your money. So what else are you going to do with it, really? Why not spend it on some top-notch, quality, grade A, spicy, sizzling, tender, moist, succulent, finger-licking good entertainment? Why not indeed? Open your wallets and your hearts. And you too could be personally thanked at the end of a video, like the following people who have pledged to a sufficient level to earn my personalised, extra personal gratitude at the end of each episode. So, special thanks to the following people, whose names I shall read out now. Graham, Tim, John, Eric, Brad, Barbara, and Guy. All of you are extra special. Even more special than the patrons below you, who haven't pledged to the sufficient level to be thanked by name. Although they are quite special as well, they're just not extra spicy. So, disappointment that I'm not in orange. Well, I do have clothing in other colours, you know. There is plenty of orange on the screen now, as you can see. And lots of fancy graphics and overlays on this channel now. The one on this particular show isn't quite as exciting, but if you watch any of the other shows on this channel, then you'll see some nice spicy overlays as well. Kind of just looking at my own little scrolling text there to make sure I didn't make any spelling mistakes. Which is a bit late now, considering we're 1 hour and 10 minutes into the episode. So, time to wrap this one up. Give me your thoughts on any of those units, whether you think I'm wildly off base with any of my assessments for any of those. And I'm going to go away and start putting together some Abyssal Dwarf lists that don't rely on triple heavy mortar. Not that I did particularly anyway, as you'd know if you followed my battle reports. I'm not one that often jumped on that particular bandwagon. Nor did I have multiple Hex Casters bouncing around and weakening entire enemy lines. So, yeah, don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Give me all your money, obviously. Like the video, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And that, all that remains to be said is good night out there. Whatever you